2 Kings chapter 5. We're going to read starting at the first verse. If you found it, say amen.
Amen.
Amen. Sound like we're all there. Now Naaman, captain of the host of the king of Syria, was a great man with his master, and honorable, because by him the Lord had given deliverance unto Syria. He was also a mighty man in valor, but he was a leper. And the Syrians had gone out by companies and had brought away captive out of the land of Israel a little maid. And she waited on Naaman's wife. And she said unto her mistress, would God my Lord were with the prophet that is in Samaria, for he would recover him from his leprosy. And one went in and told his Lord, saying, thus and thus said the maid that is of the land of Israel. And the king of Syria said, go, and I will send a letter unto the king of Israel. And he departed and took with him 10 talents of silver and 6,000 pieces of gold and 10 changes of raiment. And he brought the letter to the king of Israel, saying, now when this letter is come unto thee, behold, I have herewith sent Naaman my servant to thee, that thou mayest recover him of his leprosy. And it came to pass, when the king of Israel had read the letter, that he ripped his clothes to pieces, said, am I God to kill and to make alive, that this man of sin unto me, to recover a man of his leprosy? Wherefore consider, I pray you, and see how he seeketh a quarrel against me. And it was so, when Elisha, the man of God, had heard that the king of Israel had rent his clothes, that he sent to the king, saying, wherefore hast thou rent thy clothes? Let him come now to me, and he shall know that there is a prophet in Israel. So Naaman came with his horses and with his chariot, and stood at the door of the house of Elisha. And Elisha sent a messenger unto him, saying, go and wash in the Jordan 7 times, and thy flesh shall come again to thee, and thou shalt be clean. But Naaman was wroth. He was angry, in other words, and went away and said, behold, I thought he will surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, and strike his hand over the place and recover the leper. Or not Abana and Pharpar, rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? May I not wash in them and be clean? So he turned and went away in a rage. And his servant came near and spake unto him and said, my father, if the prophet had bid thee do some great thing, wouldest thou not have done it? how much rather then, when he saith unto thee, wash and be clean, then went he down and dipped himself 7 times in Jordan. And according to the saying of the man of God, and his flesh came again like unto the flesh of a little child, and he was clean. This morning we want to speak on the subject, following God's directions. Following God's directions. We got a lot of cooks in here this morning, and we have many times tried new recipes, and we know that the secret for having a successful recipe is make sure you do all the things that the recipe calls for. Some of us more experienced cooks, however, I shouldn't say us, because certainly that does not include me. Some of you more experienced cooks know how to cook well enough that you can alter that recipe a little bit and still come out with something that tastes as good or even better than the writer of the recipe called for. But I'm here to talk to you this morning about God's recipe. See, you could change that cooking recipe because you know something about cooking yourself. But when God gives us directions, his directions are rooted and grounded in holiness,
yes,
truth, and righteousness.
that's right.
And I ask you to tell me, what do you know about holiness, truth, and would you dare to change God's recipe? Think that it's going to work? Well, so it is with many of us today. We believe that we don't have to all believe in the same thing in order to go to heaven. We don't all have to believe in the God of Bible or the Bible in order to receive God's blessing. Well, this morning, this story tells us about what it means to follow God's directions. Here we had Naaman, who was a Syrian, what's the name I want to use? He was a Syrian captain of the host. In other words, he was a general in the army, or the equivalent of a general in the army. And he was a pretty successful general in the army, and the reason why he was successful is because God had his hand on him. Sometimes God blesses us, Sister Henderson, even when we don't know we're being blessed by God. I like Minister Campbell's testimony this morning when he was saying, I heal fast. And then he caught himself and saying, God bless me so that I could heal fast. He keeps us through seen and unseen dangers. And even though Naaman was a decorated general, even though God had given him victory in battles against Israel, I might remind you, God sometimes uses others to bring punishment upon his people, particularly in Old Testament times. We have experiencing some of that today, I do believe, that God is pouring out his wrath upon some of our Christian peoples here in America. But nonetheless, we're going to leave that alone. But so Naaman, though he was a decorated general, though he was a decorated and successful man of war, he had what? Leprosy. And sometimes, no matter how great you are, sometimes no matter how much money you have, your money and your greatness does not exempt you from troubles.
That's right. That's
Your
right.
money and your greatness does not exempt you from some of the most devastating sicknesses. And if you don't believe what I'm saying, ask Steve Jobs, who was as successful a businessman that we have known in America in recent times. And with all his success, all his money, he was not able to help him to overcome the sickness that took his life at a young age. Maybe if someone had gone to him and shared with him Jesus, as this brave young girl in our text this morning, when she saw that this great man of war was deathly ill and there was nothing anyone could do to help him. All his money couldn't help him. She said, but I have a God.
Right.
We have a Jesus who's able to overcome whatever problems anyone, anywhere in this life can have.
All right.
He can heal the sick. He can give sight to the blind.
Yes.
He's speaking, men live. He's speaking, and not only do men live, he's speaking those who are not in his will, those who are doing things that are not pleasing his sight. He's speaking, they die.
Yes.
What happened to him? God called him home. God took him out of the way. And so this young lady decided to share her God. She wasn't going to be selfish with her God. She was confident enough in her God that she could tell someone else about her God, and her God was not going to let her down. Minister Huff in his prayer, and we in our response to scripture reading this morning said it's better to have what? Confidence in who? In God. And have confidence in man. It's better to trust in prince than to trust in God than to put our trust in prince. And so this young girl of Israel who was one of the people that Naaman had captured, one of God's people that Naaman had captured. And though she was a servant of Naaman, Naaman was really the slave. She was free.
Yes, she was. Yes, indeed.
If the Lord shall set you free,
Yes.
you shall be free indeed. I might be your servant, but the only reason I'm being a faithful servant to you because the Lord commands me to be obedient to those who have charge over me. So it's not really you I'm being obedient to. It's God I'm being obedient to. Because if I be obedient to God, He's going to bless me in spite of you.
Yes.
I'm not going to get so full of myself talking about I'm one of God's children and I ain't going to let you tell me what to do.
Mercy.
One of those situations where we sometimes think that we know better than God. I'm made mindful that in Scripture that Sister Ennis and I were hearing quite a bit this past week about women submitting to their husbands. And so many women today say, we live in new age, and I ain't submitting myself to no man. To the extent that in marriage vows, they refuse to say love, honor, and obey. I love and honor you, but I ain't gonna obey you. Well, you're not obeying him, you're not honoring him, you're not submitting yourself to him, you're honoring God. Because it is God that said, and there's a blessing in following God's direction. His ways are not our ways. His thoughts are not our thoughts. You can't mess with that recipe. And so this servant girl went and said, I will share my God with him. He may not be deserving of my God, but I too was once lost in sin, shaped in iniquity. And so she says, as a prophet told to the mistress, she didn't say it to her master directly, said to his mistress, if he would only know that there is a prophet in Samaria that's able to heal him of his leprosy. And the word got back to Naaman, and not only to Naaman, somehow it got back to the king of Syria. And the king of Syria, in order, he was so honored and respectful of the captain of his army, and he says, I'm going to write a letter to the king of Israel and let the king of Israel know that I'm sending my general to him, and that I honor him, and we come to honor your prophet, who it's been told to us by this young witness that he's able to heal my servant, my captain, of his leprosy. And he took the letter to the king of Israel. And the king of Israel obviously didn't have the confidence and the faith in the God of Israel that the little girl had. And I make this point here, sometimes just because you're the head don't mean that you know everything.
All right.
Sometimes just because you're the head don't mean that you're smarter than everybody. Sometimes just because you're the pastor of the church that you got any special insight on God that others may not have. And so this king obviously didn't have the confidence in his God that the young girl of Israel, the servant girl of Israel had, and he thought the captain was trying to set him up. Come here talking about healing him of his leprosy. Nobody gets healed in leprosy. I don't know of anyone in all Israel that's ever been healed of leprosy. Well, it doesn't matter whether you know anyone has ever been cured of cancer, whether you know anyone has ever been cured of AIDS, or whatever the situation is. What I do know that I have a God who's able, and that he's got all power in heaven and earth. And what I do know is that I have a God, Dorothy, that there's nothing too hard for. He looks up and he says, Lord, all we got to do is follow his instruction. Faith is the substance of things hoped for. Faith is the evidence of things not seen. And without faith, it's impossible to please God. Do you have the faith? And are you willing to follow his instructions? And so the king of Israel said, this is a setup. They know I can't heal this man of his leprosy, and if I don't heal him of his leprosy, they're going to use it as a reason to attack me and take me into slavery. And the word got back to Elisha that the king had rent his clothes. He was so upset, he tore all of his clothes off. Oh, Lord, is about to pour out his wrath on me. Rent his clothes and calling on the Lord, have mercy. The word got back to Elisha that the king had no faith in his God. That he didn't believe that his God was able. And he went and told the king, "King, send Naaman to me." And at least he had sense enough to obey that, and he did indeed send Naaman to Elisha. And I need to share with you that Naaman, when he came with, as the scripture indicated, what did it say? Say that he came with 10 talents of silver. That's a whole lot of silver. He came with some 5,000 pieces of gold. That's a whole lot of gold. And then they said, scripture says that he came with 10 changes of raiment. So raiment and silver in that day undoubtedly was more precious than gold. It had 5,000 pieces of gold. Only 10 raiments, and they didn't have Singer sewing machines, and they didn't have a whole lot of cotton fields where they could make clothes the way we can make, and they didn't have a whole lot of what do we call it today?
Textiles.
What do we call these synthetic materials? Polyester. They hadn't heard of polyester yet. And so the king, Naaman, took with him all these gifts to give to Elisha, and appreciation for Elisha possibly healing him of his leprosy. Well, Elisha's a man of God. And being a man of God, he was about doing God's business. And about doing God's business, when you're about doing God's business, I can tell you as a pastor, if you're doing it for filthy lucre, if you're doing it for pay,
Yes.
you are in, you're setting yourself up for great hardship. You're setting yourself up for some unnecessary agony and grief. And so here Naaman was bringing all these gifts to Elisha because he was the prophet, and he could heal him. But what Naaman didn't know is Elisha had no power at all except the power that God gives to him. New Jerusalem, Pastor Henderson has no power at all. I have no message at all except the message that God gives to me.
Come on.
Yes. Amen. Yes.
I'm just an instrument that he uses to bring to you the message that he would have you to hear.
Yes.
And so Naaman came to Elijah, and Elisha saw him coming, and Elisha said, "Here," he sent his servant. He said, "Go tell him." Didn't even allow him to get to his tent. He said, "Go tell him, go dip in the Jordan 7 times, and he'll be made whole." Go dip in the Jordan 7 times? You mean all I gotta do is believe on the Lord and I'll be saved? It's that simple? Go dip in the Jordan 7 times. Here I have a cancer, here I've got AIDS, and here I've got whatever, and you telling me go dip in the Anaconda 7 times?
Yeah.
That That's what they were talking about. Hey, don't you know that I have rivers in Syria that are far cleaner than the Jordan has ever been? I've got rivers in Farpar. I've got rivers in Alabama that's so much cleaner. I've traveled all this distance. I brought you all this money. I brought you all these goods, and you didn't even come out to meet me? You sent a servant out to tell me something about go dip in the Jordan 7 times? There's nothing else. You could come out being the man of God and say, oh, in the name of Jesus, bam, be healed. That's what he was saying.
Come on, Pastor.
You know that's what we wanted. He'd be healed, bam. If neighbor said you could have at least done that to me. So, Naaman was offended. I'm not going dipping no Jordan 7 times, old filthy Jordan. And lo and behold, the little servant girl saw that her master was wrought and stopped him and said, wait, master. Come, let us reason together.
Yes.
Now, if he had asked you to do some more difficult thing, would not you have done it? So why is it that simply because he asked you to do something that's so easy to do, that is upsetting you? See, and this was a servant girl telling him that. This was a servant girl telling the pastor. This was a servant girl telling the deacon. This was a servant girl that nobody paid much attention to in the church, saying, wouldn't it make more sense to do what God tells us to do? Yes. And so, when Naaman realized it was the servant girl who had sent him there in the first place, he said, well, maybe you're right. And there, sometimes obedience, that scripture says, is better than sacrifice.
Yes.
I could go to clean rivers and it'd be better than this. Obedience is better than sacrifice. I'm not worried about clean rivers. The Bible teaches us also that what? Pride going before what? Destruction. You're so proud of how big a city you live in. You're so proud of how clean the rivers are in the city that you live in, that you can't humble yourself to follow God's instruction. And we got so many people like that in the world. They're so wrapped up in their own understanding. They're so wrapped up in their accomplishments that they're too proud to follow God's instruction. It's not just with Naaman. We got people all over the world who's got lost in sin and shame because they refuse to follow God's instruction. They want to do it their way. Yes. I'm not going dip in no Jordan. So, after the young girl persuaded him, scripture said that he went and he dipped in the Jordan 7 times. And that old filthy Anacostia, that old filthy Jordan River, 7 times.
Yes.
And after the 7th time, not only was he cleansed of his leprosy, even though he was now an old man, scripture says his skin was just as smooth as a baby's.
Yes.
When God does it, he does it right, my sisters and brothers. If we would just